It's a wonderful privilege, a great zchut, and an honor to be able to share a shiur presented by Chazaq and Chicken for Shabbos. And the title is Let's Produce. We're going to try to talk a little about the power that we have with our words. Words can heal and words can kill. So to be able to speak on behalf of Chazaq, what a wonderful organization. I was just shown around the office and the work that they do is just remarkable. I'm reminded of a Gemara in Masechet Baba Metzia, on 85th page, 85a, where the Gemara says, if one teaches a son of someone who's unaffiliated, Torah, he has so much koach that if he decrees something, Hashem is as if forced to fulfill it. The Gemara continues and says that if one teaches his son's friend Torah, Zoiche v'yoshev b'yeshiva shel mala, he will merit to sit upstairs with all the tzaddikim in the heavenly yeshiva. What greater zchut to be involved with. In Pirkei Avot, the Tana teaches us, Ve'amidu talmidim harbe. You should have many students, but not everyone is capable of having many students. Not everyone is a qualified teacher. I think if one supports this unbelievable work of Chazaq, he will get all the merits associated with those who in fact teach those people. It will be counted as if he in fact has many students. He will merit to sit in the yeshiva shel mala, and he has the koach to give blessings and to decree, and Hashem as if is forced to fulfill. Cannot think of a more worthy cause to be involved in. Partner with Chazaq. And what about Chicken for Shabbos? Chicken for Shabbos is such a wonderful, wonderful organization. They support so much mouths that have to be fed, especially families of melamdim. And there is a medrash in Vayikra Ramba Parsha Lamed Ot Bet. The medrash says, in the future there will be 7 groups of tzaddikim that will sit around HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the medrash asks, but who gets to sit to the right side of Hashem? And the medrash answers, Kat Melamdei Tinoikes, the group of the Melamdim, the group of the Rebbes, those who teach to our youth. How does the medrash know this? It's a pasuk in Tehillim, the last pasuk in Tehillim, Tet Zayin. The pasuk says, Ne'imos beyemincha netzach. Ne'imos, sweetness. When the Rebbe teaches it over with sweetness to the kid, and they just want more. Beyemincha, he gets to sit on the right side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lanetzach, for eternity. But again, as we said before, not everyone is qualified to become a teacher who can give it over with sweetness to the kids. But I think if one supports the Melamdim through Chickens for Shabbos, he gets those merits as well. And he will be associated with those who teach Torah to the youth, and therefore he gets to sit on the right side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu lanetzach. In Masechet Peah in Yerushalmi, in the 3rd chapter, Halacha Aleph, the Yerushalmi says, Tzedakah and Gmilus Chasadim have the weight corresponding to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. So when you give to Chickens for Shabbos, chickenforshabbos.com, and when you give to Chazaq, give Chazaq.com, I think one merits all those unbelievable virtues that we just mentioned. And Emetz Hashem, praiseworthy are they, and they should be always have the koyach to continue with their avodas hakodesh. So we speak about the power of our words. I want to share with you an amazing story. Shortly after the Holocaust, the Bobov Rebbe, the Grand Rebbe of Bobov, a Hasidic master, was walking to shul on a weekday, and he saw this Yid, this Jew who looked very unkempt, very sad. He looked as if he didn't have any will to live anymore. So the Baba Rebbe was walking to shul, and he asked him, would you maybe like to come along with me? And this fellow says no. Maybe you'd like to put on the tefillin? And this man says no. So the Baba Rebbe says to him, would you like to be the Chazan? And he says, Chazan? Yes, I'd like to be the Chazan. They go to shul, and he was the Chazan. A few days later, it's Shabbos. The Baba Rebbe goes to shul with his son Naftali, and right in front of the shul, right in front of the entrance to the shul, they see again this fellow smoking a cigarette on Shabbos. The Baba Rebbe looks at him and says, would you like to come in and daven with us? And he says no. The Baba Rebbe looks at him again and says, would you like to come in and maybe you can be our chazan again? You did such a good job just a few days ago. Maybe you'd like to be the chazan again. And this man says, chazan? Yes, I like that idea. Yes, I'll come in with you into shul. His son, Naftali, asks the Rebbe, you're going to give a person who's a mechalel Shabbos, he violates Shabbos, and you're going to allow him to be the chazan in our shul? And the Baba Rebbe says, why do you say that he's mechalel Shabbos? And his son says, what do you mean why? Didn't you see him smoking a cigarette at the entrance of the shul just a few minutes ago? And the Baba Rebbe looked at his son and he told him, you should know, this man is not smoking a cigarette. It's Hitler that's smoking the cigarette. It's the Nazim Yemach Shemam who are smoking the cigarette. Fast forward, 50 years later, a Hasidic looking fellow comes over to the Baba Rebbe, who was very old at the time already, and he says to him, Rebbe, you probably don't recognize me. 50 years ago you brought me to your shul and you allowed me to be the chazan. Baruch Hashem, those words of encouragement. You gave me hope. You allowed me to be who I am. And now my grandson is getting married. I wanted to invite the Rebbe to officiate the wedding. And the Rebbe was very old and weak, and he asked him where and when will the wedding take place, and he told him, I'm so sorry, I won't be able to attend, but I would like to come to the Sheva Brachos if it's possible. And he says, sure. The Baba Rebbe came to the Sheva Brachos, and this man shakes his hand and says to him, do you see the 75 little kinderlach here, 75 beautiful children, all Hasidish? And the Baba Rebbe says, yeah. He says, you know, these are not my grandchildren. Baba Rebbe, these are your grandchildren. You enabled and allowed them to become who they are because of your words of encouragement 50 years ago. The koyach that we have with our mouths. Let's counter that with another story. About 13 years ago, I was here in the States. I live in Eretz Yisrael. I live in Ramat Bet Shemesh, but I was visiting here in the States, and I was in Connecticut. And I used to go to daven in a certain town. I'm not going to mention the name, but it's up in Connecticut. And I saw that every single day, they barely had a minyan. Mincha Ma'ariv in the summer, I figured it's kind of hard. Some people are away. They go up to the mountains, barely had a minyan. One day we didn't even have a minyan for Mincha Ma'ariv. And then one day, there were two travelers passing by who joined the minyan, and between Mincha Ma'ariv, there was a few minutes. And I heard them speaking to each other and saying all about, they're raving about a certain restaurant in town, a kosher restaurant, and I was very surprised. So I already became friendly with the president of the shul, so I go over and I say, you have a kosher restaurant in this town? You barely have a minyan. And this president says to me, of course, we actually have two kosher restaurants in town. And I was very surprised. I said, who supports these restaurants? You barely have a minyan. He says, what are you talking about? We have 5 different minyanim in this town, but all of them are pretty much the same, very weak. So I asked him, tell me, how is it possible? What's going on here? Explain to me. And he says, if you have to know, if you must know, I'll tell you. About 100 years ago, came a very important rabbi to this town. And he opened up the first real big yeshiva in America. Many Gedolei Yisrael studied there. Reb Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg is one, and many others. But the Balabatim in town and the union of the Shoichtim didn't like him. They didn't get along because he wanted to raise the bar of a shchita, and they weren't happy about it. So they made his life miserable for 17 years. It peaked on Purim when they sent him a mishloach manot. What was in that mishloach manot? Live rats. And the Rebbetzin opened it and she lost it. Literally. She was hospitalized until the day she died. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And at that point, that rabbi got up and he said, I'm out of here. In this town, Torah should never flourish. And he moved his yeshiva to Ohio. We're not going to mention exact locations and exact names of the yeshiva. The yeshiva is still around until today. And the president of the shul tells me, in fact, since then, Torah has never flourished in this town. And it's been 75, 77 years. And he keeps telling me that, a few years ago, we tried to go to this rabbi's grave to ask mechila, to ask for his forgiveness. But it was a cold winter day. It was a Sunday. People don't work, so we figured we'll get 10 men. But then came the blizzard of 2006. It was so much snow, we couldn't get the minyan. We only got 8 guys. So we never got to ask him mechila. So I told him, I'm here for another week and a half or so. Get 8 guys, yourself and me, we'll have 10. Let's do it. Don't wait for the winter. It's not happening in the winter. This was in the summer. I was visiting here in Connecticut. And he says, really, you'll come? You'll join us? I said, it will be a great zchut for me. So I wait a day, and he doesn't give me a call. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a week and a half, the day I'm about to leave. I meet him and I say, so what's going on? He said, I couldn't get the guys. Couldn't get the guys to come to the cave. I couldn't get 10 men to go and ask mechila. Armed with this information, I go back to Eretz Yisrael. And I go to Maran Harav Elyashiv Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. And I tell him the whole story. And I asked him, does this Kehila have to ask mechila? This is obviously not the same people who heard the rabbi 7 years ago. And Rabbi Elyashiv wrote a letter. And in the letter he writes, Al Pi Din, they're not mechuyev, they're not obligated to go and ask mechila because this is not the same people who offended the rabbi so many years ago. However, they should do everything in their power to go and ask mechila, because from this kehila came out such a bizayon haTorah, such a disgrace to Torah. And if they do so, Hashem will, Hashem, shower them with an abundance of spirituality. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give them a spirit of Kedusha and Tahara, many, many blessings. I sent this letter to the rabbi, who was a new rabbi of that shul, and a few months later, Baruch Hashem, on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz the following year, they put flyers all over town, and many people came to his grave to ask mechila publicly. They read the letter that I sent them from Rav Elyashiv Zatzal. They said Pirkei Tehillim, and that was an unbelievable Kiddush Hashem. The following summer, I go there again, and I can't believe it. 30 people show up to a mincha in the middle of the afternoon of a summer day. I thought maybe there's a simcha in town, something going on. The following day, Shachis, the same thing. 30, 40 guys, and always on time. And that was a big chiddush, always on time. A few days later, I meet the rabbi. I said to him, I'm the one who sent you that letter. I'm so excited to see. This is amazing, so many people in the minyan. He takes me to his office and he shows me his calendar. He says, you see, we only missed one mincha a few months ago. There was something going on in town. We always have a steady minyan, usually 30 to 40 people, and always on time. It's just unbelievable. The remarkable koach of the blessing of an Adam Gadol, of Rav Elyashiv. A couple years later, I go there again. Suddenly, there's barely a minyan. And I'm wondering, what's going on? The minyan slowly dissolved and ultimately closed down. That was the summer Rav Elyashiv Zecher Tzadik Livrocha passed away. There's a machloikis in the Sifri, the dispute between our rabbis in the Medrash. A blessing of an Adam Gadol, does it apply only while he's alive or even after he departs? I said, well, at least I have one source to show the latter. To show that after Rabbi Elyashiv passed away, unfortunately, as if his bracha didn't apply anymore. But you see from this story, both the koach, the tremendous strength that we have with our words. Words can kill and words can heal. What do we choose to do with our words? Continuing with that theme of the koach, of the blessing of great individuals, Maran Sarah Toira, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Shlite, my Rebbe. A certain person from the States called me a few years ago. It was a Tuesday, and he says, I want to board the plane this evening to land in Eretz Yisrael tomorrow. If you can get me in to see Reb Chaim Kanievsky, I want to get his blessing. I said, what's going on? And he explained. His daughter was very sick. She had something very, very unique that the doctor said there's no cure for. Very rare. 1 or 2 people in the entire world have it. They did a series of tests, and they all indicated that this, in fact, is what she has. But there was one test left. So he says to his daughter, don't do the test. Wait. I'm going to go to Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to get a bracha from Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and then you can do the test. So he asks me, can you get me in? And I said, Emetz Hashem. Emetz Hashem, I will. He boards the plane. He lands the following day. We go into Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and I explained to him, Rebbe, this Yid came specially from the States just to get your blessing, because his daughter is doing really, really bad shape. He explained the whole situation, and Reb Chaim Kanievsky looks at him, and he was in a special mood that day. And he says to him, if you grow a long beard, your daughter will be okay. This guy was clean shaven. So I look at him and I say, do you accept this on yourself? And he says, yes. So I say to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, he accepts this on himself. So Reb Chaim says, so she will be okay. So I was also in a special mood that day, and I said what I normally don't say to Reb Chaim, and I asked, Rebbe, do you promise she will be okay? And Reb Chaim answered in a way that he never answers, and he says, yes. If he will grow a beard, his daughter will be okay. Amazing. Such confidence. We'll go out. The guy turns around and he goes back to the States. Sunday was the test. The doctors told him, he calls me on Monday to report. The doctor said this is an open miracle. She doesn't have anything. It went away. Open miracle. Fast forward a year and a half later, he comes back to Eretz Yisrael and he asks me to go into Reb Chaim Kanievsky again. He wants to say thank you. So we go into Reb Chaim, and I say, Rebbe, if you remember, a year and a half ago I brought this fellow. His daughter was doing very, very bad. And you gave him a blessing. And you said, if you'll grow a beard, your daughter will be okay. And that's exactly what happened. He went back to the States, she did the test, and the doctors are saying it's an open miracle. So he came to say thank you. Before he had the chance to say thank you, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, why do you want to thank me? Thank the Torah. The Torah says, V'lo tashchit et pe'at zkanecha. It has nothing to do with me. So I said, well, you did give the blessing. And Reb Chaim says, well, the Gemara says, in Brachos Daf Zayin, don't let a blessing of a simpleton be unimportant in your eyes. This is an example of the koyach hadibur, the strength that we have in our mouth. Because if you watch your mouth, and you don't speak lashon hara, and you don't say what you're not allowed to say, and if you do say those things that you're required to say, you use your words, you use your mouth for kedusha and tahara, for sanctity and purity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you tremendous koach, that when you give blessings to others, they work. I'll share with you a recent story that happened to me with Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I have a dear neighbor. His name is Itzik Khuri. I asked him permission, and he's very excited to share his story, so I can share his name. He was married for 21 years with no children. 21 years. Imagine the pain. About a year and a half ago, he goes to Reb Chaim, and he tells him his story, and Reb Chaim says, build a mikveh. That is the eitzah. That is the advice that hopefully will yield the desired results. And it's a measure for measure. You enable couples to have children, you, in return, will have children. So he raised 650,000 shekels that he didn't have. He worked tirelessly and he was able to raise this money. And Baruch Hashem, in a few months they were able to open a beautiful mikveh in a place called Zohar, about 40 minutes south of Yerushalayim. It was in the month of Tammuz. And they asked me to go there, and I spoke, and it was very, very exciting. And that night, his wife became pregnant. 9 months later, she had a baby girl. Unbelievable. But this is only round one. Wait. This fellow, Itzik Khoury, has a brother. His name is Neri Khoury. And he was married for 13 years. No children. So a month after Itzik went to Reb Chaim, and Reb Chaim told him to open up a mikveh, he goes to Reb Chaim and tells him, I'm married 13 years and I don't have any children, thinking Reb Chaim is going to say the same, open up a mikveh. But Reb Chaim looks at him and he says, Meiser, should be strict with Meiser. And he says, but Rebbe, any dollar that comes in, I write down, and I'm very strict, I give my Meiser money. And Reb Chaim says, I'm not talking about Meiser money. I'm talking about Tumas and Meisos, giving time from the fruits. And he says, I'm also strict with that. But Reb Chaim repeats himself, be careful with Meiser. So this fellow goes to the store where he always buys his fruits and vegetables, where he thought they're very strict with giving Tumot and Maasot, but apparently they were not. And he became very strict with it. And within 3 weeks, his wife became pregnant. And she gave birth about a month and a half after her sister-in-law, after Itzik Khoury had his daughter, Neri, his brother, had his son. Unbelievable koach in the mouth of the tzaddikim to give a blessing, but it doesn't end there. Itzik Khoury shared with me that before his brother was married, he lived by him for about half a year. And at one point he looked at his older brother, at Itzik, and he says to him, you know, Itzik, first you and then me. After I get married, hopefully soon, you should have children first and then I should have, because it's only right. You're older than me, you're married already a bunch of years, about 7 years at that time, and you still don't have kids. It's only right that you should have kids and then I should have them. And Itzik says, what are you saying? Don't say that, don't talk like that, don't say that. And he says, no, it's only right. First you and then me. Look at that. He opened his mouth. He had to endure 13 years of not having children. The koyach of a dibur. Recently, a widow shared with me that 5 years ago, she went along with her husband, late husband, to a lawyer to write a will. And the lawyer, apparently not the sharpest knife in the drawer, asks them, so how long do you think you're going to be around for? And her husband says, max 5 years. And she thought it's a joke, so she laughed, as the lawyer did. And exactly 5 years later, at 85, he was taken. Don't open your mouth and say things that you're not supposed to say. We have to use our mouth for encouraging others, for giving compliments, for learning Torah, for davening, for saying Tehillim, for words of Kedusha, words of Tahara, words of sanctity, words of purity, Chalila. Not to say anything negative, not to say Loshon Hara, not to cheat and lie. We have such amazing koach in our mouths. We have to make sure we use it in the right way. You know, the Chafetz Chaim says that if one speaks Lashon Hara, aside for the grave sin that he's involved in, after all, Chazal tell us in Masechet Yuma Daf Tet that that's the reason the second Beis Hamikdash, that we still mourn its destruction, was destroyed. Because of this terrible sin of Lashon Hara, Machloikes, Sinas Chinam, baseless hatred, and has the weight corresponding to the 3 cardinal sins that destroyed the first Beit HaMikdash. And the first Beit HaMikdash came back after 70 years. The second still didn't, and it's 2,000 years. Says the Chafetz Chaim, other than the Aveira, other than the transgression of saying Lashon Hara, if one speaks Lashon Hara, he demonstrates with his actions that he does not yearn and he doesn't anticipate the building of the Beit HaMikdash and the coming of Mashiach. Because if that's what's holding the Mashiach from coming, how can you be involved in Lashon Hara? It shows that you're not really looking forward. You daven every day 3 times a day and you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bring us Mashiach. We want to be back again in Yerushalayim and see the glory of the Shechina in Yerushalayim with Beit HaMikdash. But how can you speak Lashon Hara, which delays and prevents the Geula? We as parents, as teachers, as friends, We are dealing with neshamos. We are dealing with Jewish souls. And as such, few good words can influence our kids, our friends, our spouses in such a good way, and a few negative words can destroy a person. We can become doctors. Doctors heal. We can heal others with our words. We are all doctors. We are here for a mission. And our mission is to help others. Rabbi Pessin-lets says that his father, Rabbi Pessin-lets, used to say that we are here in order to help others. That's why we were created. Let's try to accept in ourselves that there shouldn't be even one day that passes by that we don't give some words of encouragement, compliments, praises to someone, whether it's our spouse, our children, our friends. It doesn't make a difference. People that we meet along the way, you don't know what it can do. Remember the first story we shared with the Baba Rebbe. 50 years later, he sees an entire army that he himself created with a few words 50 years before. If we use our mouth in the proper way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us such koach, such strength to build, to create, to decree. And the mitzvah Hashem is as if forced to fulfill those decrees, as we said before. People who cause others to learn, cause others to do the right thing, it is counted as if they themselves are involved in that mitzvah. And therefore, we close as we started. This marvelous organization, Chazaq, that teaches others Torah in so many facets. It's a conglomerate. What they do is just unbelievable. So many things that they're involved in, with one goal in mind: to spread Torah worldwide and to increase awareness, to empower others to love Ribono Shel Olam. Chickens for Shabbos, walking in the path of Hashem. Verachamav al kol ma'asav. We say a pasuk every single day in Asher Yoshve Veisecha. Hashem has mercy upon all His creatures. We are commanded to walk in Hashem's way. In fact, the 8th positive mitzvah that the Rambam counts in his count of 613 mitzvahs is V'halachta bidrachav. Walk in Hashem's ways, emulate Him. He has mercy upon all His creatures. We should feel the same. We should do the same. And therefore, if one supports Chazaq, give Chazaq.com. And if one supports Chickens for Shabbos, chickensforshabbos.com, he is involved and gets all those merits. And the mitzvah Hashem, our lot should be with them.